Have you guys ever heard the one about the polar bear that walks into a bar and he's like, "Can I get a beer?" And the bartender is like, "No, you can get a health. It's a health bar." Of course, one of the most common things that we see in video games are health bars. Whether they're glued to the screen on the HUD or floating on top of game characters, health bars almost always make it into a game in some form or the other. No, don't! Luckily, creating a health bar is actually really simple using Unity's UI system, and they can easily be modified to represent all kinds of different things like mana, cooldowns, energy, casting bars, and so on. So in this video, we'll have a look at creating a standard health bar that you can easily modify to suit your needs. We'll make it so that you can stick it to the screen or have it follow around objects in your world.
Job's done.
But first, this video is sponsored by Hostinger. Let's say you're putting the finishing touches on your game, like for example HP bars, and now you're ready to build and host your game somewhere. Hostinger offers great hosting solutions that let you do exactly this. Having your own server for your game is great for quick updates, hosting game data, and it also gives you the possibility to host a web domain linked to your game or studio. With a Hostinger cloud hosting plan, you get your own server with a dedicated IP address, daily backups, unlimited bandwidth, and so much more. Hostinger now also offers a Google Cloud-powered hosting solution. This gives you the flexibility, scalability, and robustness of Google Cloud, along with the simplicity of Hostinger and the hPanel for management. Get up to 91% off for all yearly web hosting plans using coupon code BRACKEYS and get a domain included with any premium or business plan. Simply click the link in the description to get started. Also, I'm super excited to announce that the community is hosting another BRACKEYS Game Jam. The jam will start on February 16 and end a week later on February the 23rd. As always, the theme will be announced when the jam starts. I encourage all of you to go sign up for the event now. Everything is hosted on itch, and I'll of course have a link in the description to where you can join and read more about the event. And this is a special event in that you are allowed to use any assets that you'd like, as long as you have the permission, of course. And if you've never participated in a jam before, I really cannot recommend it enough. It's a great way to challenge yourself in a stress-free environment. After all, game jams are all about having fun. So sign up now using the link in the description. And with that, I'm in the mood for a snack, so let's make a health bar. So we're here in Unity, and I've gone ahead and created this incredibly simple scene. In fact, all we have in here is just a main camera, as well as an empty player object. And on this object, I've created a script called player that just stores the health of our player. We'll have a look at this later when we want to hook up our health bar to the player. But first we of course want to make the bar itself. So let's go ahead and create some UI for our health bar. To do that, we'll right click in the hierarchy, we'll go UI, and I'm just going to select image. This is of course going to create an image object as well as a canvas that is going to store all of our UI. Let's select this canvas and hit F, and this is going to show us our entire canvas that we can work within. I'm then going to select the image here and drag it to the center of our canvas. Remember, when working with UI, you always want to use the rect tool up here. The shortcut for that is T. Now you could of course go ahead and create your health bar just using square shapes like this, but to make things fancier, I've actually gone ahead and created a few sprites. I've created this bar sprite as well as a heart. So for the image here, I'm going to take the bar sprite and drag it into the source image slot. And then to avoid any weird stretching, I'm going to hit set native size. There you go. We now have the base of our health bar. You can of course create your own sprites if you'd like, or you can just download the ones that I'm using here. There will be a link to the entire project in the description. I'm then going to rename this to border, and that's going to be the border of our health bar. And we're probably going to have quite a few UI elements inside of this health bar. So let's go ahead and create an empty object under our canvas here. Let's just right click and hit create empty. Let's rename this to health bar. And let's just make it the same size as our health bar sprite here. There we go. This way we can take our border and parent it to the health bar. So now we can have all our different sprites inside of this health bar object. Let's also go ahead and add the fill for our health bars. Let's right click on the health bar, go UI, and create another image. And for this one, we don't need a sprite since we just want it to be a solid color. But I'm going to go ahead and put it above our border so that it shows underneath. And up here in the rect transform, we can see the different anchor presets. I'm going to hold down Alt and click on the bottom right one. This is going to scale the image to fill our entire health bar. And it's also going to set the anchor points around this health bar so that if we change the scale of our health bar, we change the scale of our fill as well. Let's then go ahead and rename this to fill. Let's also select our health bar and just scale it to fit inside of our border to make sure that none of the fill shows outside. And the cool thing about this setup here is we can take our fill now and simply scale it here in order to create the illusion of our health going up and down. And an even cooler thing is that the UI system actually has a component that makes this incredibly easy to control. So let's select our health bar here, and let's go ahead and add a slider component. I'm going to make this non-interactable. I'm going to set the transition to none, navigation to none, and this way we make sure that it's just a completely static object and that we can't interact with it within the game. However, if we now take our fill here and drag it into the fill rect, we can see that we get this value slider. And just by adjusting this slider, we can make our health bar go up and down. Really, really cool. Now, of course, right now, if we resize our health bar, our border just stays the same. So let's go ahead and select our border here. And again, let's go to the angle presets here and let's click in the bottom right corner, this time without holding down Alt. And this is simply going to set the angles without adjusting the scale of the UI. So now if we scale our health bar, we scale everything accordingly. Awesome. Now we can of course also make it a bit prettier. Let's go ahead and add a heart. So let's right click, go UI image. And I'm going to drag in the heart sprite here. And again, hit set native size. Let's take this heart here and drag it to the left. Somewhere around there, looks pretty good. Let's rename it to heart. And let's set the anchor for this to be on the left hand side. This way, if we go ahead and scale our health bar, we can see that the heart stays on the left hand side. Finally, we can of course set a color for our fill here. So if we select that, we can change the color. And I'm just going to use the color picker here to get the same color as with the heart. And there we go. We now have something that looks and acts like a health bar. Awesome. Of course, the next thing that we need to do is add some code that is going to adjust this health bar on the fly. And the cool thing about this slider here is that you can see we have a minimum and maximum value. Of course, for most games, we want the minimum amount of health to be 0, so we can just leave that. But we can actually set the max value here to the max amount of health that we want. Let's say, for example, our player has a maximum of 20 health. Now we can use our value slider to go between 20 and 0. Really cool. Or if our health only uses whole numbers, we can set this to something like 4 just to demonstrate and check off this whole numbers here. And now our health is going to go in increments. Really cool. So what we can do is actually create a really simple script here that is just going to adjust this slider. So let's hit add component and let's create a health bar script. Let's say create an ad and open it up in Visual Studio. Now the first thing that we want to do when working with any kind of UI is to import the right namespace. So up here we'll be using unityengine.ui. What this allows us to do is create a variable that is going to store our slider. So we'll create a public slider and let's just call it slider. And now with the reference to this slider, we can create a function for setting the health on that slider. So let's remove these two default functions and let's instead create a public void set health, where we're going to feed it an integer with the amount of health. And all we need to do here is go slider.value equals the health passed in. It's really that simple. So now whenever we call the set health function, our script is going to find this slider here that we drag in. So it's going to find this slider and adjust the value here to the value that we set. Really cool. Of course, we also want a function for setting our max value so that we don't have to do that inside of the inspector every time. And doing that is actually just as easy. We'll just create another public void. And remember, we are making these functions public so that we can call them from other scripts. And this one is going to be called set max health. Again, it's going to take in an amount of health. And this time we can say slider.maxValue equals health. And also let's set the value to health as well to make sure that our slider starts at the maximum amount of health. And that's actually all the code we need. With this, our health bar is now ready to be implemented into any kind of script that you already have. You could put this on a player, you could put this on enemies, you can even put this on buildings. I've just gone ahead and created this very simple player script here. And if we open it up, we can see that it's really simple. All we have in here is a max health. By default, this is 100 and a current health. When we start the game, our current health is going to be set to max health. Then every time I press the space bar, we're going to take a bit of damage. I've just set it to 20 damage just to test this out. And when taking damage, we simply subtract the damage from our current health. That's all this script is currently doing. So to add our health bar in here, we'll just create a reference to it. So we'll create a public health bar. Let's just call it health bar. And then when we set our current health to our max health, let's also go health bar, that's set max health, and pass in our max health. So we've now set up our health bar. All we need to do is update it every time we take damage. So inside of our take damage function, we can go health bar dot set health to our current health. And that's it. That's actually all we need to do. 3 lines of code and we've integrated our health bar. If we save this now and go into Unity, we can see that we have this health bar slot and we just need to drag our health bar into this slot. And now if we play the game, every time we press the space bar, we can see our current health being reduced in our player script and we can see our health bar indeed going down. Awesome! Of course, there are a bunch of things that you can do to this to make it more exciting. You could, for example, use a gradient to change the color of the fill depending on how much health we have left. So in the beginning, our health bar could be green, then it could transition to yellow, and then when we don't have that much health left, we could make it red. And doing this is actually really simple. We just select our health bar, go into our health bar script, and here we can use a type of variable called a gradient. So we'll create a public gradient, and let's just call it gradient. Now let me just save this and show you what it looks like inside of Unity. As you can see, we get this gradient here, and if we click it, it opens up a gradient editor. This allows us to choose different colors at different points. To the right here is going to be the beginning of our health bar where we are at full health, and to the left here is going to be when we are at 0 health. So let's take the first one here and let's change the color of this to some kind of bright green. We can then set the last color here to some kind of red. Let's just color pick the one that we already have. And in the middle here, let's do some kind of yellow. And as you can see, right now we're kind of blending from one color to the other. And this might be something you want. However, in my case, I think it looks a bit better if we make these transitions fixed, so we go immediately from one color to the other. To do that, all we need to do is change the mode from blend to fixed. And right away, if we go ahead and readjust these points here, we can see that we can go harshly from one color to the other. I think something like that looks pretty good. So if we now close this down and go inside of our script, we can get a color from our gradient at a specific point. We do this using the evaluate function. So if I go in here under our max health and go gradient.evaluate, here we can give it a value from 0 to 1. So 1 is all the way to the right on our gradient and 0 is all the way to the left. So if we put in 1 here, we're going to get a completely green color, which is exactly what we want when our health is at max. So at this point, this is the color that we want. Of course, we need to set our fill image color to this color. So to do that, we just need a reference to it. So we'll create a public image and let's just call it fill. This way we can go fill.color equals the color that we get at the very end of our gradient. Then whenever we take damage and want to set our health anew, we can go fill.color equals gradient.evaluate. And this time we cannot say what color we want beforehand. It's going to depend on how much health we have left. In other words, it's going to depend on our value here. But our value might go from 0 to 100 or 0 to 20. And the gradient goes from 0 to 1. So instead of just using slider.value, we want to use slider.normalizedValue, which is the exact same thing, but we've just changed it to go between 0 and 1. And if we now save this and go into Unity and make sure to drag in our fill image and hit play, as we can see, our health bar starts out green. Our max value is 100, our current value is 100. If I click space, it's going to go to 80, then to 60, and it changes to yellow, then down to 40, then down to 20, and it's now red, and finally going down to 0. Awesome, so our health bar is now working, and we can change the colors to anything that we'd like. So the last thing that we need to do is, of course, place our health bar in our game. So to show you how to do that, I've gone ahead and created this simple example game. And all I've put in here is just a player, which is just a cube with a movement script, a ground object, which is also just a cube, as well as a main camera that is placed on a rotator so that it's slowly going to rotate around our scene. As you can see, this is all that is in here. Now let's go ahead and add a health bar here. And the first way, and definitely the easiest way, is just placing our health bar on the HUD so that it's kind of glued to the camera. To do this, we just take the health bar that we just created, so that was inside of the symbol scene here. I'm going to select the entire canvas, hit Ctrl+C, go into our example game and hit Ctrl+V. And there you go. You can see it just pasted this huge canvas here. If we hit F and go into 2D mode, we can see how large it is. And it's just gone ahead and simply placed that on top of our screen. This of course allows us to take our health bar and place it anywhere that we'd like. We could, for example, move it to the top left corner here and maybe also anchor it to the top left so that if we go ahead and resize our game view, it's going to stay up there. And now when we hit play, it's just stuck up there. It's not reacting to anything in our scene. And of course, to hook this up to our player, we would simply go player, drag in our player script, and simply reference our health bar. That's all we need to do. And now whenever our player takes damage, we can see our health bar updating. Awesome. But how do we go ahead and place this inside of our world if we don't want it to just be glued on top of our screen, but maybe follow around our player? Well, to do that, we'll select the canvas and we'll change the render mode from screen space to world space. This now makes this canvas here a physical object that we can move around. However, it's still incredibly large. So let's go ahead and scale it down. Let's set the scale here to 0.01 by 0.01 by 0.01. Let's also set the position to 0 by 0. And if we now hit F to focus on it, we can see that it's a bit more reasonable in size. In fact, let's go ahead and just move it up here. Let's take our health bar and let's snap it to the center. So I'm going to hold down Alt and click on the center anchor preset. We can then take the entire canvas and kind of resize it to just fit our health bar. There we go. Let's go out of 2D mode and let's now place this on top of our player. So let's just drag it under our player in order to make it move around together with our player. Let's drag it a tiny bit down and just make sure that it's in the place where we want it. Somewhere around here looks pretty good. If we have a look in the game view, we can see that it's definitely working. Of course, right now when we hit play, we can see that there's a pretty obvious problem with this. And that is the health bar is currently not rotating to point towards the camera. Instead, it's always just pointing in the same direction. This is not something we want. We want to always be able to clearly see our health bar. To do this, we will turn it into something called a billboard. A billboard is something that always points towards the camera. So let's turn our canvas into a billboard with a quick and easy script. Let's simply select our canvas, hit add component, and let's create a billboard script. Let's hit create an ad and open it up in Visual Studio. So all we need to add in here is of course a reference to our camera. So we'll create a public transform and let's just call it cam. And we can go ahead and remove the start function here, because if we want this object to point towards our camera, we probably want to make sure that we update it to do that once every frame. However, using regular update can actually cause some weird behavior here, since if our camera is moving inside of the update function, we can have some odd situations where our camera moves, then we point towards it, and other times we point towards it and then our camera moves. And this can cause some jitter. So instead of using regular update, we're going to use something called late update. This is always called after the regular update function, and so it's perfect because our camera does all its movement and then we point towards it. And doing that is actually really easy. We just go transform.lookAt, and this allows us to point this object towards a target. Now we could just put camera.position in here, and this is definitely going to point this object towards our camera. However, that's actually not how a proper billboard works. What we want to do is make sure that we point the billboard in the same direction as our camera. So to do that, we can use our current transform.position, and we can then add onto that camera.forward. In other words, we'll take our current position and we'll go 1 unit in the direction that the camera is currently facing, and that is going to be the target that we'll look for. This is a standard billboard script. It can be a bit hard to wrap your head around in the beginning, but for now, just follow me. If we save this and go into Unity, we can go ahead and hook up our camera. So I'm simply going to drag in my main camera here. And with that, we can see that our UI immediately snaps to point towards the camera. Really, really cool. And that looks much, much better. In fact, if I go into the scene view here, we can see that happening as our main camera rotates around the scene. Our UI element always rotates to face that direction. Awesome. Now, if you're using SRP, in my case I'm running the universal render pipeline, the UI might not look super crisp like this. This is a weird quirk I found with using UI world scale canvas together with SRP. The best solution to this that I found is to find your render pipeline asset. So by default this is under settings, and I'm using the universal RP high quality, and then increase the render scale. We can do this under quality, and here's a slider called render scale. And if you have a look at the UI, as I go ahead and increase this towards 2, we can see that it becomes more and more crisp. What this effectively does is that it allows us to render at a higher quality, then downscale to fit the screen size. This will definitely cost a lot in terms of graphics performance. Unfortunately, it's the only workaround I've found so far, but if anyone has a better trick, definitely let us know in the comments. And with that, our health bar should be working. So if we now go ahead and play our game, we can see that as I move around the player, our health bar follows. We can see that I can go ahead and decrease it at any time, and that it always billboards to point towards our camera. That's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Also, don't forget to check out Hostinger for fast and solid hosting solutions. Simply click the link in the description to get started. And make sure to sign up for the Brackeys Jam. Just click the link in the description to join all the other developers and have lots of fun. On that, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks to all of the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in January, and a special thanks to Lost to Violence Love Forever, CJ69, Faisal Marify, Megan Frazier, Dario Visaggio, Leo Lisette, Jim Schubab Jazz, Daniel Dusanik, Marc-Antoine Girard, Naoki Wasaki, Jacob Sanford, Michael Korbov, Gregory Pierce, The Mighty Zeus, Alison the Fierce, Yijit, and Erasmus. You guys rock!